I want to welcome you to our Eggs and Issues, and we're extremely fortunate today to have two folks who are very well informed about what's going on in our state capitol. But first, on behalf of the Mount Washington Valley Economic Council, I want to thank our sponsors, which include Live Free and Start, Drive Brand Studio, SCORE, HEB Engineers, and the CDFA. So I think both of our speakers today are eminently recognizable. We're going to ask them first to give a summary and overview of what's been going on in Concord, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So, Mr. Chandler.
Oh, you want to go ahead? No, you start.
No, you.
Okay, I'll start. Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. And as I said, I like the question part more than the speaking part, so my little speech won't be too long, I don't think. But I think we've probably been following the turmoils of the budget process that we've been going through in Concord. I'm a member of the Republican Party, and while we are in the majority, we have some members, well, they're not of our party actually, I guess, but that thought they could have a better idea with the budget process. So it was something that we hadn't seen in quite a while. So we had the Democrats on one side that didn't think the budget spent enough money, basically, in certain areas. And then we had vast majority of Republicans who thought it was pretty good. And then we had some other Republicans that thought it spent too much. So it was very hard, and it took a long time to cobble together an effort to pass the budget. So it really was at the last, it really was literally up to the last day. And we weren't really, say we in the majority, despite we were counting, we have the counts. But I can honestly tell you, we weren't really sure of how it was going to turn out. And there was not really anything, there was no backup plan. It was, I saw the speaker last night, and he said, yeah, I didn't know what we were going to do. And there really wasn't. Fortunately, a budget passed, and like all budgets, I hope that everyone isn't happy with it, because it wouldn't be a good budget if everyone was happy with it, because there's always issues that people think spend too much, not enough, or et cetera. But overall, on balance, I think it was good. From our side, certainly, it was, it's a balanced budget. We increased the rainy day fund. We cut some taxes, business profits tax and BET especially. The BET, I've always been, it's been in place now for quite a while, but we've made some, in the last two budgets, we've cut that. That's really, if there is a tax, well, all taxes are bad, but some you need them, obviously. That one is especially egregious, I think, only because it, in my opinion, it taxes a lot of businesses unfairly, because you have to pay on it whether you're making a profit or not. At least with the business profits tax, you're making money and you're paying on that. The BET, you gotta, if you're losing money, you still have to pay on your payroll. And so I'm glad that we've been able to cut that in the last two budgets. The next will take effect, the second cut, and the next biennium. But so I think that's a big improvement. But so basically that's the in a nutshell. I'll let Ed speak, and then I'll chip in if I need to, or answer questions on more specifics. So
great. So I'm a Democrat, and we're in the minority. And being in the minority is not as fun as being in the majority. But there's still a lot that gets done. There's still a lot of bipartisan work that gets done. And as you've likely heard in the past, much of that work gets done in committees. My understanding is that today is to be primarily a focus on impacts on business, since this is the Economic Council. And I'm on the Commerce Committee. Commerce Committee looks at issues of securities, banking, insurance, liquor, and other business bills. So I want to run through quickly some of the bills that we looked at in Commerce and for the most part passed, and many that will affect businesses in our state, but certainly many that will affect us locally, since we deal a lot with hospitality and alcohol sales and that kind of stuff. We almost passed a bill that will classify wines and beers and ciders that are made in the state. It's been a long-standing issue. How do you define something that's made in New Hampshire? But what if some of the product comes from New Hampshire and some of it doesn't? So there were 3 categories defined as grown in New Hampshire, made in New Hampshire, and packaged in New Hampshire. The House passed it, the Senate didn't like it. We passed a bill that will allow the brew pub license to include making cider. And that has gone into, the governor has signed that. We have what I call the LaBelle bill. We have a winery, the LaBelle Winery, I should know her first name, but I can't remember it right now. The woman who owns and runs it is a Spitfire. And she has decided that being able to sell her wine at her location is not enough. And yet we have a tiered system of control within the state relative to liquor sales that doesn't allow a manufacturer to have a retail site. So Ms. LaBelle has been working for a long time to change that and succeeded in this session so that she and other wine and beer and cider manufacturers will be allowed to have one other retail site. And this is likely the nose under the tent, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. There will be the ability for bars and places that sell liquor to access a broader range of specialty beers and other labels that are not sold by or provided by distributors at this time. There are some bars that really want to be able to offer, an incredibly broad range of beers or liquors. And some of those the state doesn't carry on a regular basis. But this bill will allow a way for distributors to access and for owners to be able to sell those products. On the healthcare perspective, you've heard about something called balance billing, which means that even though I'm in network and Memorial Hospital is part of my insurance network and I'm going to get some surgery there, it is possible that the anesthesiologist that even though Memorial has some anesthesiologists which are in network, maybe that day they can't access that anesthesiologist, and therefore somebody out of network is going to be the anesthesiologist. It is possible for that out-of-network anesthesiologist to bill you even though your expectation was that your bill would be covered through your insurance policy. It's called balance billing. We have created a study to look at that issue because it just seems unfair. And so we will look at that over the next year and hopefully come out with some new legislation that will control that, what seemed to be unfair process. Commerce gets lots of bills, and we had probably 50. And I can't read what this one does. Oh, yes, I do. Not many of us in this room deal with Bitcoin or virtual currency because we're too old. But the virtual currency world, which is something that free staters and very conservative legislators are championing in many different ways, are trying to make New Hampshire a place where this industry will come and grow. And it is, in fact, succeeding quite successfully in New Hampshire already. There is a very simple regulation in which third-party money transmitters, like Western Union, In fact, in the state, there are over 3,000 that are licensed through the banking department. Because Walmart does it and Hannaford does it, and so there are lots of third-party money transmitters. The virtual currency world decided that they didn't want that regulation. And with this legislature, we're able to succeed in being able to not be regulated for third-party money transmission for virtual currency. Which is something that, if we are back in the majority, I will work to overturn. We had some bills on pharmacy benefit managers and specialty drugs. Specialty drugs are those very expensive medications that are coming out more and more as new technology is finding ways to impact our drugs and healthcare system in a variety of ways. And pharmacy benefit managers were trying to charge specialty pharmacies in New Hampshire tens of thousands of dollars for oversight. And we were able, at least for the short term, to push back on that. But big pharmacy has lots of power, and we're going to have to relook at that again, because it was only pushed back until May of 2018. Lots of other things. One thing we were just talking about, short-term rental issues, the whole idea of computer platform lodging rentals, so like Airbnb, HomeAway, and those. The Commerce Committee and the legislature have been dealing with that issue over a number of years. We have, I think, reasonably succeeded in getting a level playing field in terms of taxes. If you rent out a room in your home, or you rent out your home because you have a second home, or you are building a building simply to use as a lodging rental, and you're using these platforms, you are required by law, and always have been, to pay the 9% rooms and meals tax. The Department of Revenue has been working much more successfully, as the legislature has been focusing on it, to get those people to pay those taxes. There are still issues relative to zoning, and so we have a study committee that has existed and will continue over the next year at least, and I sit on that study committee, to look at zoning issues relative to how does a town deal with safety issues. You know, obviously, my inn is overseen by the State Department of Fire Safety, and we were required to put in sprinklers, and we get inspected on a regular basis, and we're overseen by the Department of Health because we serve food. Many of these lodging platform businesses also provide breakfast. Some of them serve dinner. What are the issues relative to health in that, and how, in this very competitive market, do we help to support a level playing field in that industry?
And I've lost track, because we've had 2 or 3 bills, some of which we've co-sponsored, some of which
Right. Right.
The big thing on the Airbnb stuff, I think, was the law we passed that requires any of their advertisements to whoever's, when they're advertising, to put their email address on the ad. So that way the department can find out, easier to find out who's doing what. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
And the Department of Revenue is simply pulling up New Hampshire and looking at all the listings and picking and choosing to follow up on some of them to see whether or not they are paying their taxes, and if not, they're notifying those people and are bringing them into the system, and sometimes asking them to pay back taxes. But yes, that's an issue that we really care about. I've got more, but I'll shut up very soon. Relative to the budget that Jean talked about a little bit, it was fascinating to see the process that happened in the House and has...
from your point of view, it's fascinating.
Well, being in the minority does have its advantages, and we didn't need to sweat passing the budget. Gene needed to sweat passing the budget. But to see the split in the Republican Party and the power that the alt-right, Freedom Caucus, however you want to define it, had in trying to manage the debate on the budget was quite impressive. And they were willing to pull the plug on the House budget passage in order to, what do you do with your muscle? Show your muscle? Flex your muscle, thank you. And it was the first time that in known history that the House has not passed a budget. And yet, the Senate was able to use what the House did and what the governor had provided, put together something and present it, and there was a committee of conference, and it did come out and was able to be passed, even though it was tooth and nail or, working hard to find a way to get it passed even at the end. Democrats would have liked to have been a part of that process. And rather than be a part of that process, the majority chose to find a way to define the budget for themselves. Democrats would have liked to have more money for mental health services, definitely to deal with the opioid crisis. There are issues relative to the developmental disability wait list, which will grow significantly with this current budget. This budget flat funded the university system, and by flat funding, that essentially means that they've gotten less money. If you look at how money is inflating slowly, and Medicaid expansion is being required to get a waiver to mandate that people who are getting Medicaid expansion will be required to work. There are lots of details within that. And that's something that has gone to Washington in the past. But there's always been a breaker. There's always been the possibility that if the federal government chose not to approve that perspective, that Medicaid expansion would still be allowed. If the federal government, and certainly at this point this federal government is more friendly to that idea, but if the federal government for whatever reason chooses not to support that request, Medicaid expansion will end. And it will end by April of next year, and we'll know before then. And as you know, Medicaid expansion has brought 50,000 people into our system, has decreased visits to emergency rooms, and has improved the ability of our low-wage workers to have health care coverage. Lots more. I'm sure we'll be talking about it. One of the issues is retirement system. And what some retired state workers are being required to pay, which is different from what their expectation was when they signed on the dotted line to become state employees. They're going to have to pay more, even though they're retired and likely on fixed incomes. There are lots of challenges in this budget, but of course there always are.
I just want to add the Medicare, the work requirement is for people who are able to work.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a couple things on the business, in addition to reducing those two taxes I talked about. The increase the amount of expense deduction under the business profits tax from $100,000 to $500,000, which should help a number of businesses, hopefully even some here in the valley, expand. There is, I'll get to this in a minute, Frank, but another thing, permitted employees to pay wages weekly or bi-weekly. Interestingly enough, state law says you have to pay your employees on a weekly basis, which years ago was just common, that's what you did. But there is in the law, there is an exemption. You can apply for a waiver and go through a process to get exempted from that law. But it's obviously, I think most businesses now, the ones that do it, just do it, kind of. But now it's legal to do it, and the employee, if they can't complain, that's just the way it is. Because it's cheaper, obviously, to write checks and do it every 2 weeks than it is every week. So that should be a big help to some businesses too. And clarified it, one thing, employees, especially employees of large chains, just passed a law that clarifies, I don't know if that must have been in your...
Franchisee, franchisor.
Right, yeah, to make it clear that you're an employee of the people here, not someplace else in California. So I think that was an important thing too.
Yeah, there was a...
And the trust code, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a court case that brought into question whether or not the franchisor was the person, the entity responsible for local franchisee employees. And this bill clarified that so that it didn't confuse the issue relative to whose employees they were.
And the trust code, I assume that was probably in your committee too, was that?
We spent
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours on the trust code. New Hampshire has expanded our welcome to the trust industry over the past 10, 12 years. And at each step, we have looked at what the benefit is to the trust industry and what the benefit is to the state, and whether or not there's a threat to those of us who are not hyper wealthy and using some of these trust funds. This bill dealt primarily with family trust funds, but it also deregulates the possibility. It makes possible for family trusts to have totally unregulated entities, so that the banking department will have no oversight. And it was a piece of that bill that many of us were very uncomfortable with. Ultimately, it passed, and we will follow that piece of this bill. But New Hampshire is among 3 to 5 states that welcomes family trust funds in a way that no other state in the country does, and it's really built that industry here in the state. But this bill also creates credit finance agencies or something like that, which hasn't been done anywhere else in the world. And it encourages foreign family trusts to be established here in New Hampshire. And it will be interesting to see how that works. This bill obviously is a child of the trust industry, but I believe that the legislature really vetted this bill well, made some changes that were necessary, and it was a challenging process.
And the other bill dealt with the statewide municipal property tax exemptions for certain commercial and industrial constructions. Representative McCarthy might have something to add to that. Just a guess?
I do have something.
That's a tiny little mic.
I'm Representative Frank McCarthy. I've been here for about 35 years. I've been on the Budget Committee for the Municipal Budget Committee of Conway for two terms, and I'm in my 5th year down in Concord. I put in a bill this year. I'm the prime sponsor of it, House Bill 316, and I think you'll all want to, at some time, look it up. House Bill 316. What time is it? The reason I ask is, in 5 minutes, the governor of the state of New Hampshire will sign my bill into law. I was called and asked to be down for the signing. I chose no. I'd rather be here with the locals and let them know what's going on with this bill. The primary purpose of the bill is to foster economic development. and I'll hit some of the high points of the bill, how it works and what it does. It deals with municipal property taxes only. And it gives businesses a break of up to 50% of their property tax for up to a cap of 10 years. That's a lot of money. How does it work? First, a couple of important points about it. One, it will never decrease the tax base of a municipality. And I'll get into that in a minute and show you how that happens. Two, nothing is forced on anybody. The towns, the municipalities, they have to adopt the program through the warrant article system. So nothing is forced. The people have to adopt it. They have to say, yes, we want to do this. Now, how do we decrease taxes for an entity, a business entity? And there are two types that are named, one commercial and two industrial. And the warrant article can state this is for industrial type businesses or commercial type businesses or both. How does it happen? Let's say an entity wants to come in and build a factory. They buy a piece of property, let's say it's $1 million, has some buildings on it, right? They will pay whatever the tax is on that $1 million piece of property, that's it. They're going to pay that tax forever. But now they want to expand. They want to enlarge. They want to build new. And they're going to put an extra $2 million into it to turn it into what they want. That's where the tax break comes in. They get a break on that extra $2 million that they're putting into that building to build it up to what they want, hire more people, whatever. That's where the tax break comes in. So the tax base never goes down. And all it does is just puts money away for the municipality, because later on, at the end of the period, whatever that period is that is selected by the town in the warrant article, anywhere from 1 to 10 years, and 5% to 50%, that's up to the town to say how much of a break they're going to get and for how long that break is going to be. But isn't it a good idea to say to people that want to build here or bring a factory here or whatever, number one, here's what you got in the state of New Hampshire, almost the highest electric rates in the country. Come on in, build your factory here. We got the highest electric rates. We got high property taxes. We got high business taxes. We're something like 47th in the country in business taxes. We're about 7th or so overall. But we're way up in the 40s when it comes to business taxes. So what incentive is there to have people move in here and build and put a factory or whatever? Very little. But if you can say to them, look, we got 10 years to work with, and during those 10 years, we're going to give you a 50% tax break on your property taxes of the money that you put in after you purchase. And during those 10 years, we're going to get right to work. We're going to get lower electric rates. That's at least a little bit of an incentive for those people to come in. Okay, you're going to work on right to work. You're going to work on lowering the electric costs. And you're going to work on lowering the business profits tax, which we've done. And as Representative Chandler said, the enterprise tax is going down to 0.50% at the end of this new budget that we just passed. 0.5%. That's what the enterprise tax will go to. So the town says, look, we want to use this program. Somebody puts in a warrant article. They get enough signatures on it. The warrant article passes. The town adopts the program. The property tax that you pay will be cut by whatever the warrant article states. Anywhere, like I say, up to 50%. However, it is neutral for the state. It is also neutral for the counties, because the amount of county taxes is exempt, and the amount of state education taxes is exempt. The taxes, the break is only on the amount of taxes put out by the municipality itself. Exempt, the school tax, the state school tax exempt, and like I say, the county taxes are exempt. So it's financially neutral with the state. I mentioned you can break it down into two different areas, one commercial and industrial, one or the other or both. The town, they say whether it's going to, the tax break is going to go from 1 year to 10 years, whatever the town chooses. It's up to them. It's just enabling legislation. It just gives the towns the authority to do this. It doesn't require anything. And anybody have any questions on it? Yes, Jack?
Yes, Frank. You mentioned someone could put a warrant out. Can this be a selectman's article on the warrant?
I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I can't
Can
see.
this be,
Selectmen can write the article if they want to, or it can come in by petition.
Yes, yes.
be a selectman's article? And does the business have to come before the Board of Selectmen to get that abatement or that tax relief? In other words, we have a business that's come in, we want to expand, the law is in place, the town voted it in. What's the process? Does the business go before the Board of Selectmen, and the selectmen decide whether or not they qualify for this tax relief? Or does the assessor, does the assessing office just automatically do that?
No, the governing body of the municipality makes that decision, and that would be the Board of Selectmen for towns. They make the decision, but it has to be uniform. And once the warrant article is adopted by the people in the vote, it has to be done uniform, and you have to have a really good reason to say no. If somebody puts in for it, it's almost a sure thing unless you have a really good reason to say no.
And my second question is, thank you. My second question is, can the warrant article designate specific areas in a township that this would apply to? In other words, can the town say, okay, fine, we're going to vote this in, we like it, but we only want it to apply to different sections within the community? In other words, they're not creating a land ordinance, but they're saying that they're designating, just like the revitalization zone. You have to apply to the state and the town to get approval for a revitalization zone. Can they put that type of designation of land use in the, or acceptable areas where this growth could take place?
They can introduce an industrial zone, and it's only will go for that particular zone, that area, that industrial area. If it goes for commercial businesses, it's no. If it's commercial, it has to be uniform throughout the municipality. But if it's industrial, you can put that in an industrial area that's zoned off by the town.
Thank you.
I have a copy of it here if anyone wants to look at it. Maybe have it.
Tom?
Hi, Frank. Jack asked my question, but I just want to clarify that. Obviously, Conway is a bipolar community where they have a fairly healthy economic situation in North Conway, and maybe Conway needs some help, distressed area. And so I would urge, virtually the only problem I have with your bill is that the community's ability to target geographic areas and say, this will apply to this precinct or this area only, so that they can tinker with the economy a bit, because certainly people are knocking the doors down to build in North Conway, especially certain types of businesses, where we really need to attract certain other types of businesses for economic diversity, and we need to attract them to a certain part of town. So I'm in favor of the bill 90%, but if I would be able to amend it, if I had that ability, I would think about that particular provision.
The bill actually stipulates what types of businesses fall under what category. commercial or industrial. However, the bill also states that if the town's ordinances differ from that, you go by the town's ordinance.
You're saying you could rezone it geographically?
Exactly.
So that
It's
you
up to
only
the
allow
town.
certain-
Forces nothing on the town. It's what the town wants to do.
I think I oftentimes, we pass these laws and sometimes we write them, and then when they get written by the experts, I don't know, what is that? But there is a clause in here, and I'll just read it, and you can figure out whether what it does. In an eligible municipality adopting a property tax exemption, et cetera, may, in lieu of the definitions in this section, adopt by reference the definitions of similar terms as may be contained in that town's or city's zoning ordinance. So you got to interpret that, but it seems like the town may be able to do what you want it to do, but I don't go on my say-so.
And I would
I
just-
don't know.
I would just
Zone
encourage you to
as
call them.
industrial, and that would mean that only industrial property can go in that area.
Right.
So that would pretty much eliminate.
That's
North
that,
Conway, which has
right.
no industrial zone.
Yeah.
But if the town were to say commercial or retail or something like that, they would not be able to limit it to Conway Village. They would have to give the same property tax break to North Conway as they were allowing in Conway. And so that's my only, and it's not a big section, it's just my only little piece of that bill that I say I would tweak. And
So-
it's time to tweak it.
If you have already talked with the municipal association, that's great. If you haven't, I would give them a call and ask for a specific interpretation. And if the bill needs to be amended, that's what we're here for.
But like I say, Frank, I think it's a good bill.
But just remember this, the municipal association, they don't hold any power. They can't decree you to do something. They can just suggest maybe, but that's it.
I was talking about interpretation.
But they can't. Whoever's home.
Okay.
Oh, my other,
We need to
all
get
right.
it recorded.
But to answer Tom's thing, the state already allows a revitalization zone, and what that does is it allows businesses in that area to get a discounted BET tax and business profit tax for 5 years. So if we could, in that bill, the town designates as a revitalization zone, that abatement would work within that framework, that would take care of your commercial business.
Well, get something drafted up and let us know, we can file it. I just have a couple other, okay.
Unless you have a question, that's it.
I just want to remember other things. In addition, Ed's mentioned what committee he was on. I'm chairman of the Public Works and Highways Committee. As such, we deal with the capital budget, and of some interest to this area, judging by the number of phone calls I got. There is, in this year's capital budget, which I assume the governor will sign, is $2.5 million for affordable housing in New Hampshire for the next biennium. Also, a couple other bills that passed, while not directly affecting businesses, infrastructure is an important part, both statewide and locally. The meals and rooms tax revenue distribution was increased by $5 million. That goes back to the cities and towns. The big one was Senate Bill 38, which provides $36 million. I call it extra, over and above what the block grant aids for highways. So the towns will be getting about the same amount of money this year, this summer. As I say, I call it extra money. And it's substantial, I think, pretty much. Conway, for instance, will get an additional $220,000 roughly to spend on its roads that they hadn't planned on. And Butler gets 90, Jackson 35, Albany 33, Eaton 36. House location 1,800. I don't know what you're gonna do on that road up there, Ed, but and it has to be spent on infrastructure improvements, but that's in addition to what they're already getting, so that's gonna be a big help, I think. Just a couple other important things that we passed. The common blackberry is the official berry for the biennium. And the painted turtle is the state reptile for the biennium. I guess people got tired of naming things, so they said, well, we'll just name them for the biennium. So they're good for 2 years, and after that, I don't know what happens to them, but
Well,
anyway.
I
so-
think that makes sense because fourth graders then can continue to, name things for 2 years and then we'll go back to the drawing board. I just want to comment on Representative McCarthy's effort, which obviously can encourage business in our area, and we certainly want to do that. He said that we're going to be telling people that we're going to continue to fight for right to work. I just want you to know that we defeated right to work this time, even though we have a Republican majority, and we have defeated right to work in the past several sessions, and it is likely we will continue to defeat right to work because it is bad for New Hampshire. And a couple of other quickies relative to the business tax cuts. It is not something that has been requested specifically by the business community this time around. And we haven't seen the benefit of the business tax cuts that were put into place in the last budget. And it just seems practical to me to make sure that we are benefiting both in growth of business or in encouraging new business to the state with the business tax cuts that have been put in place before we continue to reduce the revenues that the state will have, because we're going to need offsetting revenues from new businesses. The business tax cuts, as they are projected, and they don't go into effect until the next biennium, will grow to $128 million a year in fiscal year 2022. Between now and 2022, there will be a reduction of $208 million in the state budget. So it's not all a good picture. It is a challenge.
That's a good picture,
And
hopefully.
And Senate Bill 129, which is something that this area cares about and the North Country cares about, was a renewable energy fund bill that both Democrats and Republicans voted for, which preserves businesses and jobs in the logging industry and the wood products industry, biomass industry.
Questions? I don't know who's first. Gail?
I guess it was, Jean, you said, how do you determine who is able, I want to know how you determine who is able to work versus who needs to work as you sort through the people that are out there and are going to lose
I don't know what the guidelines are
benefits.
specifically, but certainly that anything is not intended if a recipient is not physically able, mentally, or whatever, able to do any work, then there is no work requirement for that. Is exactly what the definitions are. I can't tell you that.
But who determines that?
I think it will probably be DHHS, the Health and Human Services Department. And it's my understanding that well over 70% of Medicaid expansion recipients have at least one member of the household who is working.
Thanks, representatives. I wonder if you can answer that, now that the first 800-pound gorilla in the legislature has been tackled in the budget, I wonder if there's any appetite, or your thoughts on any appetite for the one that's always there, and that's education funding. New Hampshire Center for Public Policy just came out with their study that said basically in 20 years, since the Claremont 2 decision, nothing has changed. So the rich towns are getting richer, the poor towns are getting poorer. Berlin's, and the polarity is only going to increase over time. Berlin is pushing $40 per thousand in a tax rate and getting $250,000 less from the state every year, and property-rich towns are actually paying less now than they were 20 years ago, adjusted for inflation. So I just wonder if you want to address, is there any appetite in the legislature to try and make something happen on education funding?
I would just say probably not a lot, because it's an almost impossible thing to try to figure out. My guess is, and while I don't look forward to it, before too long, the legislature's going to have to do something, because someone's going to go back to court. I don't think there's any question about that. And then who knows what the result will be, but I think it's pretty clear that the result will be the same as it was on the Claremont case, my guess is. So unless the legislature does something in the interim, I know there's, as like everything, and sometimes it takes time, there is at least one committee or a couple that are looking at that, and they will be over the summer and making some recommendations. We did provide, $45 million more, I think, this year in, what's it called, the special, what used to be special ed, formerly catastrophic aid. So there has been a interest on the legislation to help in certain areas. So something will happen, yes. What, I don't know. But
I don't have much to add to that, except there are people who are trying to work at defining a system that would be more equitable. Whether or not that's whether it's possible to move that through the legislature is a question.
I have a question on, did I read in the paper or someplace online or something that Keno passed? And
We call it Keno Garden.
Keno Garden, it's going to, that's one way of funding education in the very youngest ages. So Keno did pass, and how is that going to be regulated? Can anybody, any bar, any restaurant?
It has to be passed locally, so that each town and municipality has the ability to either accept or not to have Keno in its locality. And then based on that, the funds, the revenue generated from Keno has been projected to be whatever millions of dollars, and that money will go towards funding full-day kindergarten. It will, however, not reach the total full-day cost of first grade through high school. It will be $1,100 added to the $1,800 that the state already provides for half-day kindergarten. So there's still a piece that needs to be funded to get it to paying for the total for full-day kindergarten. And even if a town chooses not to have Keno, that funding will still come to whatever towns choose to provide full-day kindergarten.
I didn't vote for it, just so, in the interest of full disclosure. One, I don't like Keno. I think it's the most insidious. I'd vote for a casino, which I've never voted for, before I'd vote for Keno. It's, in my opinion, a very bad gambling, and especially the kindergarten part. I just think we should be upfront. If we're going to fund kindergarten, fund it. The Keno thing, it's kind of like, well, if we get in this much, we'll give them this much, and if we don't, it's not a good system, in my opinion.
But
it's there, it passed. So.
we funded education through the lottery system going to the Education Trust Fund from the get-go. So there has been a history of using gambling to fund education.
Just a follow-up on regulations, is it going to be, what type of business is going to be able to have Keno? If the town says, okay, yeah, we're allowing it, are there regulations and restrictions on what businesses can actually have Keno in it?
My understanding is that it's bars and restaurants, but there will be a rulemaking process that will define those businesses.
The Lottery Commission is the one handling it, isn't it? I believe the Lottery Commission is the agency in charge of it. I believe, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Kennedy from Bartlett, and I wanted to ask about animal cruelty because I am very concerned about what has been happening here. What's wrong with this picture where we have, 90-plus Great Danes all of a sudden rescued from a woman who has a $1.5 million valued property of 56 acres in Wolfboro, and she's charged with 2 misdemeanors and is off on minimal bail here. Meantime, our own shelter here, the wonderful people at our shelter, are killing themselves to take care of these animals and to get to restore them to good health so they can be adopted. And the community is all chipping into this, trying to help. All of us are trying to help with this, both physically and financially. And I'll tell you what's wrong with this situation. It's Concord. We don't have strong enough laws in the state of New Hampshire to prevent this and deter this. We've had 4 of these cases in the last couple of years. There was one in Chatham, Ossipee, Berlin just recently, and on top of it, this one, which is extraordinary, I think. And I would like a commitment from the 2 of you and Frank and our whole delegation here to take a leadership role in this and strengthen these laws in the state of New Hampshire. live free or die goes just so far. And I do believe in that, and I do believe in less regulation, but in this case, there's something really wrong here, that people just walk away from this kind of situation. And if you don't think that this affects quality of life for the rest of us and affects the business quality of life and the reputation of the area and of the state, I think people are mistaken. And I think that this is an easy fix, probably, and a bipartisan fix. And wouldn't you like something easy to do? That's my suggestion.
I think that one of the things that's really important is that advocates are necessary across the spectrum. And you are a very good advocate. The Humane Society of the United States has a great lobbyist in Concord. Her name is Lindsay Hamrick, and I know you know her.
I don't know her personally, but
Well, she was associated with the Humane Society a while ago. She is an incredibly smart and successful lobbyist. And we will take your message, but I would encourage you to talk to Lindsay directly about what kind of legislation she thinks will work, will get through the legislature, and where her advocates are within the House and the Senate, because there are people who are very much supporters of protecting our animals.
I would be very surprised. You mentioned just 2 charges. I'm pretty sure you'll see more charges brought again in that case that's
Sounds like
current.
it.
I believe that. I don't have any inside knowledge other than I'm sure there will be. Part of the problem in that case was, even though some people were aware, I guess, of workers and things that finally did some recording and reporting, she wasn't registered with anyone, so there was no way for the New Hampshire or any agency to check. There was no registration that she was actually doing any of this breeding or whatever. So I don't know how you get something like that. I don't know how you correct that. The penalties, that's another story. You may enhance those a little bit, but I think Ed's right. We need to look at
You
it.
have to make it hard enough so that if
Right.
it happens, it's spectacular
Yeah.
in terms of the penalty for
Right.
it, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul, that's fine.
I'm looking at what's going on in Washington and trying to figure out on the healthcare issues and know how important that balance has been to New Hampshire's ability to put together a budget and to serve people with medical products in this state. And I'm just wondering, with the national thing in such flux and changes that could take place so fast that could drastically affect New Hampshire. And I think the biggest change that people aren't looking at right now is that the federal government wants to pass on a whole lot of responsibility to the states, and the states are going to need to pick it up. What in the legislature is being done to be prepared for that and to study for it and to deal with it? Because I think this is a classic push the problem back on the states and let them deal with it. So your thoughts?
Well, I haven't responded much to the current healthcare because we don't know what it is. That's part of the problem. Obviously, everyone follows it. Washington doesn't know what it is yet. So until they do, I will say that as far as responding, the legislature, I think we kind of get bad marks sometimes for taking too long to do things. We can be very responsive. And in cases like this, I have no doubt that the legislature would act in one fashion or the other. I don't know which way it would go in a rapid response time to whatever has to be done. Interestingly, because you've seen that the governor has come out opposed to this, and for valid reasons, in my opinion.
Belatedly.
Yeah, but I think, well, no, but there again, it's hard when you don't know what it is to come out opposed to something. You can't just say, well, I guess I'm going to be opposed to this after I see it. So I don't criticize his response time. It's just, and I think that's picking up steam along the way, as evidenced by having no vote. So I'm not so sure it's going to be as bad. I don't think they'll, and this is just maybe it's a hopeful opinion, I don't think Congress will be able to pass a bill that's devastating to New Hampshire because it will affect so many other states. I just don't think that's going to happen, but I may be beyond hope for that. But I think that it's going to have something that garners enough support, and to do that, obviously, they need a lot more people supporting it, and there's gonna have to be a lot of changes to what they're proposing.
From your lips to God's ear. The legislature passed a bill that allows the insurance department to access a federal waiver called the 1332 waiver, which helps, which will bring some money into the state, which will help the insurance department stabilize a very rickety insurance system at this point. That is one thing that we did just within the past month because the roller coaster was coming down. And that will give us a little breathing room. We have a healthcare oversight committee, which consists of 3 senators and 4 House reps. I'm one of the House reps that's on that, and that is exists so that when the legislature is out, it's possible for this healthcare oversight committee to hear from the various departments what the challenges are in response to what's coming down, and if necessary, as Jean said, we can call the legislature back if necessary, but this oversight committee has some broad abilities as well. My fear is that if Medicaid gets block granted, so be it, but if, as came out of the House and the Senate, we were to get 70% of what we have spent on Medicaid in the recent past, at least Medicaid expansion would go away and possibly other programs would be cut. It's a frightening situation, and we will deal with it in the best way we can.
Optimistically.
Any other questions?
Okay, thanks.
That being the case, on behalf of the Economic Council.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
very
you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I said, I have one copy of 316 if anyone would like it. Take with them and look at.
I was going to ask a question about the emerging demographics.
Hi, my name is Scott Gleason, and I enjoy watching Valley Vision Channel 3. I'm here with a couple of my friends from Texas, Tyler and Savannah, and I enjoy watching the Eggs and Issues, the Conway Budget Committee, and the Left and Right shows that are on Channel 3.
This is CCTV, Conway Community Television.